Hey, there's new news now in the Gabby Pettto case, and I'm going to tell you all about a judge's decision just a few days ago, all about Gabby Petito and her terrible death and the aftermath. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Yep, it's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
Expressed in this podcast are those solely of individuals interviewed and participating in this show and do not represent those of Peacemaker Network and Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Today, we're going to bring you new news on the Gabby Pettto case. Well, quick summary before we lead up to the new news today. It was in August 2021 that this young lady by the name of Gabby Petito, well, she was killed by her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, at the age of 22. That was while they were traveling together on a van life journey across the United States. Hey, that trip was planned to last 4 months, began on July the 2nd, 2021, but unfortunately it was cut short as well as Petito's life. You see, she disappeared late in August, started the trip in July, disappeared in August. And the old Crimebuster Charlie, we covered it in real time. That's right, in real time as the search for Gabby was broadcasted. Even then, I correctly predicted where the villain, the guy who killed her, would be found. And in that prediction, by the way, I went against the prediction of Dog the Bounty Hunter, who also had his own predictions about where that killer would be found. Yep, your crime fighter, unfortunately, was correct where the villain was and what happened to the villain that killed Gabby Pettto. Hey, we're going to leave you a link in the show notes where you can go all the way back to an entire series on Gabby Pettto, and you can follow it in real time. But today, we're going to introduce new information that was not known until just recently about this case. But before we do that, let me welcome any new listeners we may have. We always love to say hi to those who just started listening to the podcast from wherever you are all around the world. I'm amazed that we get contact from other places, other countries who are listening to Charlie Crimebuster. Hey, thank you. Thank you for being a part of Charlie's Crime Talk. I invite you each week, whether you're a new listener or one of those many people, thousands of them, who all listen every week, you can reach out with a shout-out. We'd like for you to do that. There you can ask questions, make suggestions. You can tell me I don't have a clue on what I'm talking about if you like. You see, it's a safe place for you to respond. You can do all of that, and you can reach me by emailing me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's Charlie Crimebuster, one word, @gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the program, well, go on over there to peacemakernetwork.com. Peacemakernetwork.com. You can become a badge, BADGE supporter. There, your support will not only support the program, but you will help law enforcement, first responders, and the military. Again, go to peacemakernetwork.com. Hey, by the way, before we get into the program today, we do have listeners from all over. But if you happen to live here in Central Florida and you would like to be a part of something that can make a difference, you see, my friend, you can help protect property and life. You can do that by becoming a licensed security officer, and you can help protect others. Now, you and I both know the police can't be everywhere at the same time. You see, often as a cop, when I was on patrol, well, my response to crime as a patrol officer was usually after the fact. But as a security officer, well, you're on the front line protecting life and property. And JimLMauney, through his organization, Stemtac, well, he's now announcing that there is again another state of Florida certified Class G armed security course. My friend, I'll tell you, this is not like any Class G training I have ever witnessed. You see, through Jim, you'll learn not only information that you need to succeed in the course, but you will learn valuable information to protect your life and to get you home to your family. Hey, let me tell you something, folks. Private security is a growing industry today. And unfortunately, the way crime is going in this country, well, your job would be in high demand. And get this now, with Stemtac, as little as $200. Yep, $200. You can have the course of instruction, learn valuable information about your weapon, how it operates, and how you can operate it safely. And you're going to learn from the basics on up. We even had a lady from a security company wanting to advance to the G certification. She had never, ever shot a semi-automatic weapon. And yet, on that course, through Jim's training, she excelled with a perfect score. My friend, that's how good the instruction is. Hey, you also learn laws and how they operate for G-class security in the state of Florida. It also includes range time. That's right, range time is included in it at the outpost. That's right, the outpost. A special range set up to teach and train. My friend, that's awesome. So if you're interested, the class will be June the 30th through July the 2nd. June the 30th through July the 2nd. Through a big long weekend there, you can get the whole thing done. And if you're anywhere in Florida, well, my friend, you can just come to beautiful Daytona Beach. Make it a vacation. Stay the weekend. Get some training at the same time. Now, if you have want to know additional information, have questions, or you want to sign up, just email JimLMauney, that's JimLMauney, JimLMauney at gmail.com. By the way, we're going to put that link in the show notes so you'll have it handy. All right, let's get going. Just like we do on all of our cases, we like to kick it off with a crazy crook story. And then we're going to get into the new news about Gabby Pettto and her case. Now, my friend, it's both good and disappointing to know that the crazy crooks do not just exist in America. Unfortunately, there are crazy crooks all over the world. This one comes from across the pond, as they say, and it was not just one crazy crook, but a pair of them. I guess you could call these burglars cheapskate burglars. I just want to call them Dumb and Dumber. They fit the bill for sure. You see, these guys, they did not want to spend money on getting a nice mask, to disguise their face. They didn't even want to go out and purchase one of those COVID masks that you can get pretty cheap off the shelves, even today. But rather, they thought, well, we're going to save a little money. We're just going to take an old pair of trousers, cut one of the legs off. We're going to make our mask out of the leg on one of those trouser legs. And my friend, in the course of the store robberies, well, one of the men now was so dumb that he even took up precious time. Now, of course, in the case of robbery, if you watch TV, you see, you know that you want to get in and get out. You want to get in and get out. That is, you want to do it fast. The quicker you get out, the more opportunity you have to escape. The cops, the popo. But this idiot wanted to take his time, and he even stayed behind to scoop out all the change in the cash drawer, even to the very last penny. And if that wasn't enough, if that wasn't dumb enough, well, the crazy crook, well, he called his buddy. He called his buddy by his name, Adam Breen. That's right. Called him by his name. Then, my friend, after the cops run them down, because now they had a name, as they got to the home, my friend, I got to tell you, nope, you can't make this up. In the home, there, in plain view, well, was that pair of trousers. Yep, the pair of trousers, complete with one leg missing, that tied the crazy duo to the robbery. You see where the clerks could easily describe the mess that they had in. And so, my friend, Dumb and Dumber, who took up precious time to get away by getting the last penny out of the cash drawer, who used one of their real names and called it out loud in front of others, well, and also left the trousers out for the cops to find where they made their mask from. Well, these men, Dumb and Dumber, they're now spending time behind bars. That's right, they're behind bars, they're locked up. And they indeed have made Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crooks of the week. Now, my friend, back to our main focus. The most popular podcast, probably some of the most popular podcasts we've done in the past, was the Gabby Pettto story. You see, it seemed like this case, well, it had the world on speed dial as far as releasing information. And one of the first pieces of information was the video of the traffic stop that was out west there, where the couple's van was pulled over to investigate for domestic violence. And boy, talk about controversy. Boy, the Monday morning quarterbacks, they were out all over the place in media discussing how the Popo handled that traffic stop. Did they do the right thing? If they had not let them go, would Gabby have been murdered anyway? All kinds of questions there. Again, you can go back to the entire podcast, and we did an entire podcast just on the traffic stop. We're going to put that link where you can go back to get the back episodes in the show notes. So after Petito's disappearance, Laundrie, he raised suspicion when he drove the van from Wyoming back to his parents' Florida home, refused to discuss her whereabouts. He was deemed a person of interest in the case, and an arrest warrant. Arrest warrant was issued on charges of making him, on him, because he made withdrawals. That's right, made withdrawals from her debit card. Then he left his home on September the 13th, and then 4 days later, they reported that he was missing. So now you have Gabby missing, and now you have Brian Laundrie missing, and nobody knows where either are. But thanks to the followers of true crime there in the digital world, tips were turned in all over the place, and on September the 19th that year, Petito's remains was found in Wyoming's Teton National Forest. Autopsy was done. It found out that she was killed by manual strangulation. Meanwhile, Brian Laundrie is missing himself, and not even no one seems to know where he is. Even Dog the Bounty Hunter, he comes all the way here to Florida to help lead the chase for this missing man. He thought he was going in the wind, but your crime fighter, Charlie here, we told you, prior to them finding him, we told you where you would find him at, exactly where he would be found, and what happened to him. So after a month of speculation about Laundrie's whereabouts, there was an extended search of the area around his home. And his skeletal remains, it was discovered in an environmental park on October the 20th, not far from his house. It was confirmed by an autopsy on him as well, on November the 23rd, that Laundrie, he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. And the FBI later announced that he admitted to killing Petito in his notebook, which was found near his remains. Now, I have told you that there is new news. That's right, new news. And there is. You see, Brian's mother wrote a letter that was turned over to the police. Appears it was with Brian and the stuff when he was found in that swamp. Now, the letter had printed on the outside, get this, the words, quote, burn after reading, unquote. Thus, in the media today, it's simply called the burn letter. Now, I'm going to get into that letter in a moment, but first I must share with you what else they found in Brian's backpack and his remains. And I'm talking about a biggie, my friend. I'm talking about a literal confession. A confession of what happened to Gabby Pettto. And for the first time on Charlie Crimebuster, you can hear about that confession letter, word by word, as it was lifted from Brian's backpack, where he had written it. Now, before we look at the letter that his mom wrote him, I want to take a moment for us to look at the confession that Brian made about how Gabby died at his hands. Now, in these writings, he described her in glowing terms. And I quote, he said, she's a new daughter to my mother, an aunt to my nephews. Please do not make this harder for them. This is an unexpected tragedy. Now he goes on to describe what happened, and I'm quoting the letter. Rushing back to our car, trying to cross the streams before it got too dark to see if it's too cold. I hear a splash and a scream. I could barely see. I couldn't find her for a moment. Shouted her name. found her breathing heavily, gasping. She was freezing cold. The temperature had dropped to freezing, and she was soaking wet. I carried her as far as I could from the stream toward the car, stumbling, exhausted in shock. I knew I couldn't safely carry her any more, so I started a fire, spooned her as close as we could to the heat. She was so thin, had already been freezing too long. I couldn't at the time realize that I should have started the fire first, but I wanted her out of the cold back to the car. From where I started the fire, I had no idea how far the car might be, only knew it was across the creek. Went on to say, well, when I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead, and eventually it gets larger. Her feet hurt, her wrists hurt. She was freezing, shaking violently. And while carrying her, she continually made sounds of pain. Laying next to her, she said little, lasping between violent shakes, gasping in pain, begging for an end to her pain. She would fall asleep, and I would shake her awake, fearing she shouldn't close her eyes if she had a concussion. She would wake in pain, start her whole painful cycle again, furious that I was the one waking her. She wouldn't let me try to cross the creek. She thought, like me, that the fire would go out in her sleep and she'd freeze. I don't know the extent of Gabby's injuries, only that she was in extreme pain. I ended her life. I thought it was merciful, that it was what she wanted. But I see now all the mistakes I made. I panicked. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided took away her pain, I knew I couldn't go on without her. I rushed home to spend any time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James or TK kill me, but I wouldn't want them to spend time in jail over my mistake, even though I'm sure they would have liked to. I am ending my life, not because of fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. I've lost our whole future together, every moment we could have shared. I'm sorry for everyone's loss. Please do not make it harder for my family. They lost a son and a daughter, the most wonderful girl in the world. Gabby, I'm sorry. Then he goes on to write, I have killed myself by this creek, in hopes that animals may tear me apart, that it may make some of her family happy. Well, there you go, my friend. The confession of Brian Laundrie from his own words. What do you think? Think it's a bunch of lies? A way to justify his horrible deed? Or was it something else entirely? Did he really just kill her in a rage of anger? Maybe it was more than an accident and him wanting to put an end to her suffering. Well, I guess we'll really never know. But now there's new information. And this information centers on a letter written to Brian by his mother. It is called the Burn Letter. And now the puzzle is, when was that letter written? And that puzzle, my friend, has gone all the way to the courts. Because just a few days ago, here in Florida, a Florida judge denied Brian Laundrie's parents' request to withhold that controversial letter called the Burn Reading Letter. That was that his mom, Roberta, wrote to her son from the parents of his murdered former fiancée. And Gabby Pettto now, from the parents of her, they're part of a civil lawsuit that kicked off Wednesday, stemming from the travel blogger's 2021 strangling in Wyoming. You see, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, they've not yet been charged with a crime in connection with Petito's death. But in the civil suit, they're asking the court to deny Petito's family a request for the copy of the letter, which that letter allegedly mentions Roberta offering to lend her son a shovel to bake a cake with something inside to spring him from prison. That was according to an attorney for the Petito parents. Now, the attorney for Petito's parents, Joseph and Nicole, well, they wanted that letter turned over as part of the discovery of the lawsuit. That lawsuit alleges that the Laundries, that Brian's parents really knew about Petito's death before her remains were found, and that they attempted to help their own son flee justice. But now here's what the judge says. The judge says, Wednesday, after a hearing that lasted more than 3 hours, he went ahead and denied that motion. Though the question really is, was this sent before Gabby's death, or was it sent after her death? And did his parents really know what happened to Gabby? Will they be held criminally liable? Now, before we leave, I want to read that letter word to word to you. The letter that allegedly his mother wrote. So now the mother of Brian Laundrie, the man who killed his fiancée, Gabby Pettto, later himself, she wrote to her son. And I'm going to quote this now. This letter was obtained by CNN and was published. She said, quote, this is his mother writing to him. I just want you to remember that I will always love you, and I know you will always love me. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing will or could ever divide us. No matter what we do, or where we go, or what we say, we will always love each other. That's what Roberta Laundrie wrote. And then here is the tricky part. She said, quote, if you're in jail, I will bake a cake with a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. And it does say that with a parent cross out over the word bring. If you fly to the moon, I'll be watching the skies for your reentry. If you say you hate my guts, well, I'll get you guts. Now, Roberta Laundrie, she said that letter was written way before her son's trip with Petito. And one of her attorneys released a statement saying it was no way related to Gabby. But now, Petito's family, the family's challenged those findings, and they're wanting those findings to be released. And here is the real startling thing. The envelope containing the letter said, quote, burn after reading. And it was recovered from Brian Laundrie's backpack. It was recovered right there where his remains were found in that Florida swamp in October 2021. And the new news was the fact that the judge has ruled upon it just a few days ago. He said, at this time, I'm going to be denying defendant's motion for the protective order. That's what Judge Brewer said after the hearing that lasted more than 3 hours. So the question, my friend, is this. Was it sent before Gabby's death, or was it sent after her death? And did his parents really know what happened to Gabby? Will they be civilly liable? Will they be criminally liable? Hey, tell me what you think. Give me an email, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Go to Facebook. Post on Facebook what you think. Go to Charlie Crimebuster, Facebook. Now, before we close, there are some things that really may not be clear. We may not know when that letter was really written. We may not know if any of that letter had any truth whatsoever about his confession. But there is one thing that is very clear, and that is this. My friend, this case is all about domestic violence. Every year in this country, according to statistics, about 4,000 women die due to domestic violence. Hey, friend, that's more people than died on that terrible day in December, on September the 11th. We call it 9/11. When we were under attack. More people die every single year from domestic violence than those that died when our country was under attack by these terrorists, extremists. So, my friend, this is a real problem. And if you know someone who is a victim of domestic violence, please today call the Domestic Violence Helpline. Get them to help and a place where they can get a plan to get to safety. And that number, my friend, is 1-800-799-7233. Again, that's 1-800-799-7233. We will also include that in our show notes. Again, let me say, you know someone, a friend, a loved one, who's in a domestic violence situation, get them out of it before it's too late to do something to help them. You don't know how to do it? Call this number, 1-800-799-7233. Get this friend, get this loved one to call this number, 1-800-799-7233. And again, it's going to be listed in the show notes. So, this is Charlie Crimebuster. New news about the Gabby Pettto case. We've just shared it with you. And so, until this time, next time. Charlie here, reminding you, be safe, be alert. Yep, for the life you save, it may very well be your very own.